Welcome to the Ustick Road Church of the Nazarene in Caldwell, Idaho. This is the Sunday morning worship service.
A lot of excitement in this church. Woohoo! That's exciting. Yeah, it is. You know, we get in here and I told Nancy, I said, if you don't feel loved now, it's your own fault. With all the kids up here with us, but it is a joy. And I've been in church without very many kids, and I'm going to tell you, I prefer it with them than without. I don't care if they're noisy. I don't care if they disturb you because they're bouncing around and stuff. Put on your sunglasses and build a bridge and get over it. You know, I love it. I love it. Babies are a lot of excitement, and I just enjoy them. So we're over in Leviticus chapter 22 is where I'm taking you to today. Leviticus chapter 22. And I'm going to go for the first 3 verses, and then I'm going to skip down and do verse 9 as well. When I'm reading these passages, I'm giving you the general overview of all the details. For example, the behavior of the priests are spelled out. And there's a lot of things in there that you can read. Some of them I just don't want to read. I mean, you know, like there are things that I don't want to read, like from a public setting. You can read those. You know, the Bible should be rated at least PG-13. I mean, you know, there's things in there I don't want to read. You know, at least, you know, I read them myself, and I go, I ain't reading that in public. You read that your own self. You know, so, but there's things in there really good, but I'm not going to break down all the details. And some of it's just details, you know. I mean, it talks about the sacrifices and behaviors and stuff like that. So it's not that in those days, they were incredibly relevant and pertinent to what the commands and the dictates and what was going on there. So I invite you to read those passages that I skip. I just don't read them all to you. So you get that, right? So, but I want you to have the overview of what it is anyway. This is starting at verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons to treat with respect the sacred offerings the Israelites consecrate to me, so that they will not profane my holy name. I am the Lord. Say to them, for the generations to come, if any of your descendants is ceremonially unclean, and yet comes near the sacred offerings that the Israelites consecrate to the Lord, that person must be cut off from my presence. I am the Lord." That's pretty intense. That person must be cut off from my presence. Now let's drop down to verse 9. The priests are to keep my requirements so that they do not become guilty and die for treating them with contempt. I am the Lord who makes them holy. Father, I thank you for your word, your will, and I thank you for this time together today. I pray, dear Father, that you would speak to our hearts what you would have for us, Lord. May we hear your voice, not mine. Hide the speaker behind the cross, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. You know, this week was kind of challenging for us. This week we have had a technology crisis. There we go. Yeah. That was good. That was pretty illustrative of what I hate technology. I hate it. I am a nightmare with it. I carry a cell phone now because you guys encouraged me to get the cell phone. I mean, that was more the church's idea than mine. I had one, but it was more like used as a walkie-talkie. You know, it was just Nancy and I. That was it. And the church said, you need to carry a cell phone. So you guys were the push behind that. And then I got onto Facebook because Brianna made me. And I get pulled in, and I get my cell phone that I get is my daughter's hand-me-downs. You know, and then they give me a smartphone. I was carrying that for a while, but this phone was smarter than I was, and it made me look dumb. I didn't like that much. So I'm not real big with technology. I hate it. You know, not as bad as Nancy. When we were in college, we used to use a typewriter. She did. It was her brother's typewriter. That was the brand name on it, Brothers. I thought for a long time she was using her brother's typewriter. I said, I can get you your own, you know. But now we've become kind of dependent upon all of these things, you know. And now, you know, we've grown on this codependency. So this last week, Nancy had one of her kids helped her out with her cell phone in her classroom. She had left it in the bathroom, and they knew She left it in the bathroom. Obviously she wanted it in the toilet. So they helped out with the cell phone. And so we had a cell phone crisis over the last week or so. And so, but then I had a computer crisis this last week. I have allergies, and they're terrible. I mean, I take all kinds of pills and eye drops and all that kind of stuff. I should have been given some to my computer because my computer got a virus. I should have, maybe low on vitamins, I'm not sure. But my computer got a virus, and it was a really interesting virus. I took it to the computer doctor, and I said, my computer is sick. And I said, we've prayed for it, we've laid hands on it. I don't know what else to do. I'm done. And they took it, and they called me back and said, your computer has a ransom virus. Any of you guys had that yet? That one is really special. It's a special virus. What it did is it locked up all of the programs and all of the files on my computer. But fortunately, the people who created it had a solution for me if I could give them $500. Whew, how lucky that they happened to have a solution. I said, no thanks. I'm going to get a different computer, and I'm going to put that one in my shed until somebody comes up with a cure for it. So that's where it is right now. It's out in my garage. And I got a different computer. I said, there's nothing on there that I can't replace. However, then I had some kind of a wire break outside on my telephone wire, or my electric wire coming in. The ground wire broke in the trees, and then that, I don't know what it did. It just caused some kind of a power surge. My power surge protector protected some things, and it didn't protect everything apparently, because I haven't been able to get my modem and my router to work now. So that's been my week. I have had a technology-less week, thanks to friends. But I thought about this virus thing, because that was the one that really got my goat. The trees growing through the electric wire, I wasn't pleased with the trees, but I do like the shade. But the guys who would come up with something in order to hurt other people, in order to gain for their own gain with a total disregard for how much pain or problems that they inflicted upon somebody else. And I think that's got to be the 10th ring of hell. I mean, that's got to be the deepest level. I mean, that's got to be the ones that, the devil's going to be chewing on those guys for sure. And it reminded me of when I did a study on the 10 Commandments. And one of the things that I've gone back to several times in my studies is the 6th commandment: thou shalt not kill. Is when I looked up the derivation of the word, where the word came from. Thou shalt not murder, and I looked it up, and when I dug through it and I found out where it came from, it encapsulated so much more than I had ever thought to see. Now, there are probably different interpretations, and there are probably different people with different trains of thought on it, but the one that I liked the most was, you shall not look at another person the way a lion looks at a goat. Isn't that good? You shall not murder. Let's think about it for a minute. You will not look at another person the way a lion looks at a goat. How does a lion look at a goat? A lion looks at a goat and he licks his chops. He gets hungry. He sees him. You won't look at another person as a resource for you. You will not view another person as an opportunity. You won't look at somebody else as a means of serving yourself, because you've now degraded them to something less than human. You've now put them at a state lower than you. You've looked at them as somebody who is there for your service, for your enjoyment, for what you want, rather than viewing them as an equal creation of the Creator. That encapsulates so much more than just murder. Murder would be a byproduct. Murder would be a result of looking at somebody as a lion looks at a goat. Do you follow that? If you don't look at them that way, you're not going to murder them. but it's striking at the heart of the issue, which is really fun. It's really delightful because we see Jesus having to flesh it out in the New Testament because people didn't want to take it to that level. They wanted to stop short of where God had intended it. And God said, no, it's so much more than that. And Jesus had to bring it home later on and say, wait a minute, if you even harbor hatred in your heart, you've already committed murder, which is where it was intended to be in the first place. Isn't that cool? When I read this passage, and the priests were commanded to not treat the people's sacrifices with disrespect. You see, what had happened is the priests had begun to see the people's sacrifices as their food source. And indeed it was. It was the provision that God made. But they began to see it more as a provision for them than as a provision for the people's sacrifices. They were treating it with disrespect. Do you follow that? There were things that were probably being done. The meat wasn't cooked all the way through. We read in another story where the priest dipped in the fork and pulled out the meat prematurely. And they would treat these sacrifices more as for themselves than for others, than for God. Do you follow that? And sometimes it's real easy for us to do that in every setting. We can start to see the sacrifices that people make to God, and we forget that it's to God first. And I think that that's really super critical for us as Christians to understand that when somebody makes a sacrifice to a service to the Lord, that is first to God. And we are grateful for that sacrifice. You know, and I wanted to, along that line, I just got to thinking about it because I haven't done anything to say thank you in a while. And there were just so many people that I owe thank yous to. And so I wanted to just say thanks. I looked out yesterday, and you guys have seen the one building out here already, our shed that we're going to be using as a Sunday school class. The foundation was built for the second one. The third one is going to be started quite soon. And so some men joined yesterday to start the work on that second shed. And I came over for a few minutes. I was taking off. Danielle had a thing in Seattle, so I made a speed flight up to Seattle and back yesterday. So I was, just before I caught the plane out, I came over and worked for a few minutes. But I wanted to say thank you first to those, the three men that I saw there that were out there working, and that was Cindy Bowling. I got her this one. I saw her out there working, moving these big laminated beams. What are they, 4x12 or something like that? To see her and Bill Bass out there moving those. So here, I need a Vanna. Bill Bass, yeah, I wanted to say thank you to him for that. And then I saw that, and I know that Larry was out there, but I'm just going to let you share yours with him. And I saw Dalton was out there. See her? Come here, Vanna. And I just wanted to say thank you for that work that those guys are doing. And then I wanted to say, Vanna. I wanted to say thank you to Brian Perkins. You know, that guy is here all the time. Everything that is ever going on, he's always there. You know, and you know, I wanted to say thank you to my daughter Brianna, who is putting in so much time right now in our children's department, and I just wanted to say thank you. And then I wanted to say thank you to Sierra. Yeah, that's you. It's when people do something for the Lord, sometimes we forget that it's for God first. Sometimes we take it too much towards ourselves, and we forget that when a person is making a sacrifice, they're doing it for the kingdom. And that this mutual service, even that we have to one another, sometimes we can even start to think of the quality of service and say, that's not what I want. I don't know. God bless you. Sometimes maybe we need to encourage one another in something. If Jason's doing something, he's doing a terrible job, I say, hey, Jason, man, let me help you out with that. Let me tell you how I think that could do better. You know, sometimes you can say that. But don't say it if the relationship won't support it. You know what I mean? You can say anything if the relationship will support it, but if the relationship won't support it, then just take your pleasant little opinion to the grave with you. Don't even let anybody know. You just keep that a secret from here to eternity. You know, because if the when I say that, I mean this, is if the relationship will support it. If that person knows that I love them, if that person knows that I care, I can say something and they can take that criticism and it will make what they're doing better. But that will also be the reason that I'm saying it. It won't be because I'm being a little pouty puss who wants to get his way. And if you're just being pouty and whiny, you know you. Is there ever a time you're not being pouty and whiny? You know your motivation. If the relationship will support it, maybe you can say something. If not, then don't be a critic first, because that's being selfish. That's putting you first. And that's a terrible thing to thrust onto the relationship. It's what the priests were convicted of. I had one of the kids gave me a drawing last week. They came up and said, "Pastor, I made this drawing for you." They're always constantly giving me drawings. And I said, "Oh, thank you." I said, "What is it there?" And they said, "That's a dog." And I said, "I think you could have done a little better on the legs. You know, when I look at this, I don't see a dog. You're going to have to explain. Is that the tail?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Why'd you draw the tail like that? What kind of a dog is this? Is this a shepherd? You know, is it a collie? What kind of a dog? I can't even tell what kind of a dog this is from the drawing. You go back and you practice this. And when you've done it a few times, you can bring this dog to me. But until I can look at it and tell what kind of breed it is, I really don't think you should be giving out pictures of dogs. I think you are very ill qualified for that." So they brought it back this week, and I said, "Let me see." And I said, "Go back and practice a little bit more." So eventually they'll get the dog, and I'll take the picture of the dog from them. But it might take a few weeks till they bring it up to the standard where I think it's acceptable. I'm only kidding, guys. I didn't do that. God forbid we should ever be such critical folks. But I had a little boy one time that came up to me, and I don't remember all the setting, but he looked up to me and he came up. And have you ever seen a little kid with candy? They put it in their pocket first. I mean, and these were like, I don't know what kind they were. They were like, I don't know. They were some kind of a jelly type of thing. And after they take it out of their pocket, there's a secret little boys have. They hold it in their hand. And you know that melts in your mouth, not in your hand kind of theory? Doesn't pertain to little boys. Doesn't. And this was when I was a young man. He came up and he said, he opened his hand. And his hand was like, it was a reddish colored candy. I could tell that immediately. Because the whole palm of his hand was red. And he said, "Would you like one of my candies?" And he offered me up a candy. And I said, "Oh, those look really yummy, but no thank you. I'm all right." And I let him keep them. I got to be honest with you. I regretted it almost. I got no further away than like the next day or whatever. And I felt terrible. I so wish I had picked up one of those nasty looking melted candies that was disgusting and eaten it. I really wish I had. I really felt sorry that I had not. I regretted it, that I did not take what he offered up out of his nasty, grubby, dirty little Lord knows what's on it hand. You know, because it was offered to me. My immune system would kick it. I would have lived, you know. I mean, I've eaten worse, probably, maybe, I don't know. It depends what's there, maybe. But most likely I would have lived, maybe gotten a shot or two. But it was what he was offering, you know. It was what he was offering. It's what he had in his hands. It's what he had. And to him it was a treasure. He treasured it so much that he was carrying it around in the palm of his hand. It was precious to him, and I didn't accept it because I was foolish. And I thought it was about whether or not I wanted it. Somehow or another, I thought that his offering was not acceptable. And I thought, I did a disservice to that little guy. I messed up. Since then, I've learned how to palm candy. Best candy ever. I love it. It's good. It works. Because I don't want to say I've eaten everything, because that would be a lie too. but I've accepted everything, you know. But I try not to treat it with disrespect. I try to honor the sacrifice that's made. When somebody is doing something, I understand the heart that's behind it. God says this right here, listen, you're profaning me. So they will not profane my holy name. Don't treat their offering with disrespect so you don't profane my name. God takes this personally. He says, when you're making it all about you, you forget that it's all about me. And the offering that's offered up, you can't do that. These priests are admonished to this. And it's an interesting thing because sometimes a sacrifice could be made in an unworthy fashion. But the sacrifice most effectively attacked here was the service of the priests. The offering that the priests were making. God said that's the offering that wasn't worthy, not the sacrifice of the people. There are times when the sacrifice isn't, but we need to make sure our sacrifice is worthy. That what we do is worthy of the calling that God has placed upon our hearts. Okay, how many of you did the homework I gave you last week? I assigned you homework. How many of you remember the homework I gave you last week? Okay, how many of you did the homework that I gave you last week? You want to know what's wrong with the public school system? I don't know what to tell you, folks. Guys, here was the homework last week. Last week, the homework was you watch a show. I gave you permission to watch anything you wanted. I didn't even try to legislate that, Brother Anthony. I didn't say you could or couldn't watch that. I said watch anything you want to watch on TV. Any of the nasty stuff that you might engage in was totally fine. Any garbage, you know the saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? We know that. I mean, it's not, you say, well, this stuff doesn't affect me. That is such a lie. Do you believe that what you watch and what you hear and what you listen to doesn't affect you? If you do, if you believe that's true, then you need to let the multi-billion-dollar industry know that is investing in 30 seconds and spends tens of millions of dollars on a 30-second advertisement at the Super Bowl, that what they're spending that money on doesn't make a difference. Do you know how much money goes into advertising? It's multi-billion dollars that these guys spend because they believe it does affect you. So when we say it doesn't affect me, we are being incredibly simple because every study shows that it does. And these guys are betting the bank and cashing in on it because it does affect us. Okay, the homework assignment was this. Watch anything you want on TV. Watch anything. Put any kind of trashy media. Tammy, anything you want. You just go on and watch it. Doesn't make any difference. But you write down every time you hear a cuss word or a sexual innuendo. The challenge, you could pick up violence if you wanted to watch those. There's only 2 of you did the assignment. How am I going to ask anything else? To those of you that did you say, I'm not going to watch that show this week because I don't want to mark down how many times? Did anybody do that? Did anybody say? Okay, a few of you. Okay, so since you got an F on the assignment this week, I'm going to let you do it again this week, but I'm only giving you partial credit. So the assignment this week, I'm going to give it to you again. Watch any kind of garbagey, trashy, horrible stuff on television or at the movies, wherever you want, but I want you to keep a tally on how many times they say something yucky or do something yucky. You can define yucky, but go for that, okay? Why? It's sensitizing ourselves to what we're watching, what we're doing. It's making us more keenly aware of where we're investing our time and who we're giving it to. Okay, does everybody understand the homework assignment? Raise your hand if you understand the assignment. Okay, put your hands down. Understand this. You pay me tens of thousands of dollars every year. I'd like to say hundreds of thousands. You pay me tens of thousands of dollars every year, and you say this, Pastor, we want you to lead this church. We want you to give us homework assignments and make us smarter and godlier. And you pay me to do that. That's the reason you have me up here. I've given you an assignment. I want you to do it. Okay? That's your assignment. And if you don't do it, I'm going to do horrible things to you. I'm certain. I don't know what to threaten you with. But it's a horrible threat. Horrible. I'm reminded of Cain. Cain and Abel. Cain was the farmer and Abel was the one who tended the flocks. And one of the offerings that was brought to God was acceptable while one was not. The sacrifice that Abel brought was a good one. It was his best. It was the first fruits. It was all he could bring. It was him saying, "This is my very best, Lord." And he presented it to God. While Cain said, "I got these fruits, picked them out of the garden, got the best ones. Don't really want to eat these. May as well give them to the Lord." You know? Sometimes that's what we bring to God. It's like, well, don't have anything else to do. I guess I may as well go to church on Sunday. God bless you. If our attitude is that we're going to give God whatever's left over, we've kind of already made our sacrifice unworthy. So we need to be careful about what we're bringing in. We need to be making sure that our sacrifice is holy. And we need to make sure that we are treating others people's sacrifices as holy. Why? Because God says this in verse 9. I am the Lord who makes them holy. When we step outside of that, when we say that this is not holy, that is not holy, we need to understand that it is the Lord that is the one who makes it so. It's what we have presented to God as our very best. And of course, ultimately, that sacrifice will only be acceptable if it's all of me. I can't sacrifice. Pat, I appreciate that song. I love Part-Time Servant. Great song. Is a part-time servant is not a servant at all. I'm going to serve the Lord. You guys know people that have made those professions. And don't misunderstand me. Does anybody here ever feel like you're unworthy as a Christian? Good. When you start feeling like you're worthy, you're probably arrogant. You know, none of us is ever going to be worthy. You will never be worthy of the blood of Jesus Christ. None of us ever will be. That's an acceptable standard, that we understand that. But I want to do all that I can. Inside of my limitations and my frailties and how goofy I am and how many mistakes I make, I want to do my best. It might not be very good, and I admit that. It might not be very good, but Lord, I want to draw the best dog that I can. It may never be discernible as a German Shepherd. The Lord may have to exercise grace forever, understanding what picture I draw. But I want to do my very best in doing so. And I believe wholeheartedly that God's not going to critique me and say, looks more like a poodle. You know, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that as a loving Father, He accepts us, warts and all. But I do believe that we have an obligation to totally sacrifice and surrender ourselves to the kingdom. To that end point, I did a baptism last week. Benita and AJ were baptized last week, and Wade couldn't be here, but requested to be baptized as well. And so we're going to go outside, and I'm going to baptize Wade. But I also want to make an invitation. If that's your testimony this morning, if you say, you know what, Pastor, I want to make a complete and total surrender to Jesus Christ, that the Lord may do with me as He so pleases, that He might direct my life and be the one. A part-time servant is not a servant. A part-time servant of convenience. If we only serve the Lord when it suits our purposes and when it's what we want, we're really not serving the Lord at all. You know, I always say, you know, if a person does what they're told when it's what they want to do, they haven't really exercised obedience. It's only obedience when it's something you don't want to do. That's when obedience counts. You know, I always like to use my wife. I tell her to go shop and spend as much money as she can. And she manages to pull it off. She obeys me because she's a good wife and I'm in charge. Whatever. I'm telling this story, you know. But, obedience only counts. You tell your kids, I tell my kids, go in the other room. Eat ice cream, watch TV, do whatever you feel like, and they obey me. Then I say, go clean your room, and they say, tell us to go eat ice cream and watch TV and do whatever. Obedience only counts when it's not what you want to do. Obedience only counts when it's a surrender of your will to God's. So, we're going to go outside. I'm going to baptize Wade, but if there's somebody else who says, you know what, Pastor, that's me too. I need to be baptized. I need to surrender who I am to my Father in heaven this morning. So if we get out there and the Lord moves on your heart, I want to give you the invitation and let you know that it's open. We can baptize you too, as the Lord would lead you. So you're dismissed to the courtyard for the rest of our service.